Welcome this evening to the third night of The Gifts of Your Third Act. I'm so happy you're all here tonight again to share in the wisdom of some of our speakers. We've got, over the course of the 4 evenings we've gathered, we're going to have over 20 inspiring and passionate experts to share their wisdom, their stories, and some energizing discussions with all of us. I'm really grateful. Tonight we have a really interesting lineup of speakers and topics. So I'm so glad you're here. Our hope is that you'll walk away with some tools and hopefully some ignited courage and optimism that can help sustain you in the challenging days we're in and help you embrace the decades ahead for your third act. Tonight's program is about resilience, and that's a very powerful subject, especially now. And I wanted to just share a couple of quick thoughts before I introduce the whole evening and Gina Vild, our main speaker. For me, resilience simply is seeing the seeming tragedies of our lives, the events, the unforeseen events, as a life affirming opportunity in some way. It's in these times that we're really called to dig deep, to get to know the true and very strong self that we have inside us, to see the pure beauty and simple blessing of being alive. Some of this gets clouded over, especially in the crazy times in our midlife. And it's in these moments that we can find deep gratitude, optimism, and strength. Tragedy, though undoubtedly daunting and challenging and very painful, can help us create fuel to move forward. So tonight's first speaker, Gina Vild, is going to share a talk that she's entitled Resilience for the Ages. It's totally full of inspiration, information, and tools. Very, very helpful tools that she's put together, along with some very engaging poems and stories that will help you embrace life as you age. Then we're going to transition to 2 breakout session options. The first is demystifying CBD. It's an explanation to answer all the questions you may have about CBD. It's also a story of reinvention of the co-founders' lives in their 60s. The second option is entitled How Do You Want to Be Seen? With portrait photographer Lisa Arnold. And that one is intriguing. I'll share a little bit more about the breakout sessions after tonight's presentation. We've designed this whole evening, this series, to be very interactive, and we're wanting to hear from you. We're wanting you to share. So please, if you feel comfortable, please do so. The other thing is that if you're okay with it, please open up your video. It's so much more personal when we get to see each other. So next on to Gina. Gina is the co-author of an amazing book called The 2 Most Important Days: How to Find Your Purpose and Live a Happier, Healthier Life. Her second book, here we are tonight hearing a lot of what's going into it, will be on the topic of resilience. She most recently served as Associate Dean and Chief Communications Officer at Harvard Medical School. She's held numerous leadership roles in healthcare and government, and today consults on brand leadership and crisis management. She also blogs for Psychology Today. I was introduced to Gina in one of those I call synchronicity moments, just a bit over a year ago, by my wonderful oncologist. They're longtime friends, and I'm so grateful to know her and so happy she's here tonight to teach us how to build the strength of our resilience muscles. So thank you, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello to everyone. I'm in Boston and I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm really grateful to Diana for including me among these really spectacular speakers. Diana, you have captured the zeitgeist of our time, because never has the theme of resilience and aging been more important. we're all aging, right? I mean, by 2030, 20% of the population will be 65 or older. That's only 10 years from now. As Betty Friedan said, aging is not lost youth, but a new stage of opportunity and strength. And that's what we're really going to explore. So, who is it that's turning 65? It's all these boomers who rocked the world, who gave us the Beatles, the internet, personal computers, Saturday Night Live, gender equality, Star Wars. We thought we were, as Rod Stewart sang, forever young. And perhaps we are at heart. But physiologically, we know we cannot outrun nature. Have you ever been asked how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? Not
Mm,
how old you want to be, but how old are you inside? What is your internal age? So take a second and please write the answer to that question down in the chat box. And Diana's going to monitor and share it. And I'm going to guess that what we're going to see is that internally, all of us are forever young. So does anyone want to share? And I'll go first. I'm 36, many decades younger than what's on my driver's license.
I'm 30. That's how I feel. It's not how I don't want to be 30. I love being 61. So, oh, I see a lot. I see these are great. Marty's 42. Rebecca's 39. Judy Fine is 32, 30, 22. Ooh, Ann Cutler's 22. Love that. Pamela's 27, 35, 35, 40, 35, 40. So we're all sort of right smack, I would call it, in that early midlife or younger in some cases, sort of mostly 30s.
Right. Yeah. So we're forever young. So the question is really, how do we ensure that we can remain energetically as close to our internal age as possible, right? How do we achieve what is called successful aging? And I know that Ashton Applewhite, for those of you who were part of the program the last couple days, actually talked about successful aging. And there are three components to it. And she covered two: high quality cognitive abilities and strong physical abilities. And I'm really going to talk about the third, which is really resilience and how to stay resilient in mind and spirit. So the questions I'm going to answer, try to touch on tonight are: how do we make sure that we are living with the same enthusiasm, vigor, and hopefulness of our internal age? Can resilience be learned? And if so, what are the tools we need to be resilient? So let me describe what I'm talking about with resilience. I mean, thriving in the face of adversity, continuing to blossom and seeking renewal, finding meaning and new direction when confronted with unexpected change and personal and professional setbacks. I love this statement made by Nelson Mandela, and he said, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again."
Mm.
And Plato said long ago, "He who is of a calm and happy nature will hardly feel the pressure of age. But to him who is an opposite disposition, youth and age are equally a burden." So that's really what we want to do tonight. Is we want to think about how to get back up once we've fallen down and how to maintain that calm and happy nature that Plato talked about. And so building on the wisdom of this wisdom are scientific studies that people of all ages, all backgrounds, whatever their experiences, even those and their declining health, have shown can be resilient. So all people, we have learned through studies, have the capacity for resilience. And what that translates to is less depression, less strength, greater optimism, and now we're learning it may even lead to greater longevity. Think about that. We're talking about aging. One study found that those ages 94 to 98 years old who identified as having high resilience were 43.1% more likely to reach 100 years of age
Wow.
than those who identified as low resilience. And another study found that adults ages 85 and older appear to have even greater capacity for resilience than those who are much younger. This demonstrates that it's never too late to expand your capacity for resilience. And another study showed that, and this may not surprise you, that women tend to be more resilient than men. And you may have an idea why, and we're going to look at that in a minute. Let's begin by acknowledging that one of life's greatest truths: no one escapes the need for resilience. At the macro level, right now, we are in the midst of a life-threatening pandemic. We're grappling with fear of disease, the loss of a predictable future. There's no endpoint in sight. Things that are familiar, how we work, how we shop, how we entertain, how we connect with others, they're temporarily or forever altered. 2020 has laid unprecedented stress and uncertainty at our doorstep. And at the micro level, and what we're really in this program to talk about is aging. We're all grappling with aging. And as we get older, life is increasingly framed by loss, right?
Yeah.
So children grow up, they leave the nest. As women, we lose fertility. Many marriages, about 50%, end in divorce. Our parents may have diminished capacity, or we may lose them entirely. Our youthful appearance wanes. We may have what I like to call twinges in our hinges. So we may not have the same physical strength. And as we inch toward retirement, we often lose the work that gave our life meaning. So really, it's all quite overwhelming, isn't it? So if you're comfortable, jot down in the chat box some of the losses you have experienced. And Diana, at whatever point, if you have anything, just break in and we can share some of those.
Okay.
Some of us in the chat box will report bumps in the road. Others will report massive craters. So why is it that some of us, no matter what the trauma or disappointment, rally with fortitude and ultimately thrive, while others sink into despair? When the proverbial barn burns down, why do some weep and others say, now I can see the stars? I'm fascinated by this topic, which is why I'm writing a book about it, building on the book Diana mentioned, which I co-authored with Sanjiv Chopra on happiness and purpose. And I've learned that topics are intimately linked. Diana, anything in our chat box?
Quite a bit. My heart is actually pumping as I'm reading it because it's pretty profound to see these pop up. And many of these people I know, many I don't know, but I'll read a few. Childhood best friend at age 32, parents, career identity, mother, parents, friends, perfect health, dream home, mom, bankruptcy, divorce, parents, empty nest, death of significant other, watching my parents age, moving and loss of place and land I love, husband's stroke, watching parents age, childhood best friend at age 42, death of mother at 20, then father 20 years later, best friend and sister 5 years later, loss of daughter, career purpose, illness, aging parents, health, career purpose, Alzheimer's husband, death of father, divorce, loss of parents after long stretch of dementia.
Tremendously profound. There's a tremendous amount of loss in this group, our little community here tonight. So now for a poll question, I'd like to ask, how resilient do you think you are? So on a scale of 4 to 1, with 4 being very resilient and 1 being not resilient, please indicate how resilient you think you are. And when that's complete, Diana, please jump in. And I'm guessing you're here tonight because you'd like to learn how to build your resilience muscle. We'd all like to be like the proverbial starfish, regenerating limbs and retaining our vibrancy and beauty for all of our lives, wouldn't we? So how do we achieve this? How do we flourish for all of our lives? I have a mnemonic for this, which is easy for us to remember. My mnemonic is buoyant. So my mnemonic for resilience. And why is that? And that's because to be buoyant is to rise, to be optimistic, to remain afloat, and to ride the waves of life, no matter how torturous the sea. Here are the components. Here are the traits for being buoyant. Be a human being, not a human doing. Live a mindful life. U, be of use. Know your purpose and return to it. O is for optimism. Optimism. Outlook is everything. Why? Your thoughts, how to manage your thoughts. And that is the most powerful arrow in your quiver, is learning how to manage your thoughts. A is for acceptance. Ceding your control over the future and events is key to resilience. Navigating, N is for navigating new paths. Using adversity to charge a new path forward, taking your crisis as a life lesson and learning how to use it. T is for teamwork. One of the most formidable factors in a successful, resilient, happy life is having a community of support.
I'm really happy to see that 38% of people are very resilient, 35% resilient, 19% somewhat, and only 8% feel not especially resilient. So that's really good to hear, and very helpful information, I think, for you as we talk tonight. One other thing I just want to draw to Wendy's attention, as Gina's going through, she has a set of slides that has that really beautiful set of water. So at some point, we need to catch up with Gina. She's going through each of the mnemonics, each of the letters. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about being a human being and not a human doing, or living a mindful life. So Mary Oliver wrote that what's important for life is to be astonished, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it, or live mindfully is really what she was saying. And that concept of a human being versus a human doing has been widely referenced, from Kurt Vonnegut to Dr. Wayne Dyer to Scott Peck and The Road Less Traveled. But it's a key component of resilience. We all know people who are busy, busy, busy. Maybe you're one of them. They try to outrun the clock. One of my favorite poems has the line, "Sometimes we take off our watch, sometimes we lie in the hammock." So, how often do you do that? What human doing should remember is that what people most often regret on their deathbed is not, "I should have been busier or bought more stuff or outrun the clock." They say, "I should have spent more time with friends. I should have said, 'I love you' more often. I should have traveled more. I should have said, 'I'm sorry.' I should have had the courage to pursue my dreams and aspirations." Human beings live in their life. They inhale the pleasures of their life. They savor it. Here are some things that human beings do. They are mindful. They're acutely aware of how they spend their time. As the ancient poet Rumi said, "Stay close to any sounds that make you glad you're alive." Human beings they meditate once a day or twice a day. They spend time in nature, gardening, hiking, bird watching, sitting by the ocean, and they pay attention. They have pets, they get lost in music, and importantly, they have a gratitude practice. Now, Robert Edmonds of the University of California, Davis, one of the foremost experts on gratitude, determined that a gratitude practice where you write down every day just a couple things you're grateful for, and it has to be in writing, it's not a conversation or a thought, can actually make you happier within 45 days. And having a gratitude practice has these benefits: a more meaningful series of relationships, better physical health and habits of self care, better mental health, less negative emotion, as evidenced actually by higher scores on academic tests, increased empathy and reduced aggression, regular and more restful sleep, and who doesn't need that? Increased self esteem and reduced social envy, and greater resistance to trauma. All of this benefits and contributes to resilience. So just think about it: writing down 2 or 3 things every single day, just in a notebook, about what you're grateful for can change your life that dramatically. And as we think about gratitude and resilience, my lifelong gratitude practice has taught me something really important: that even darkness deserves gratitude. I have learned that not all growth takes place in the sunlight. Mary Oliver also said, "Someone once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift."
Mm.
So I think of even difficulties that have been a matter of doors and windows, doors closing, windows opening. So now let's talk about the you, to be of use. Anne Frank said, "Ever an optimist, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world." So know your purpose and return to it. And you can reset your purpose over the course of your life. So those who are resilient are of use to others. Their lives are in service of others. They show kindness to others. The Dalai Lama once said, "We are visitors on this planet. We are here for 90 or 100 years at the very most. During that period, we must try to do something good, something useful with our lives. If you contribute to other people's happiness, you will find the true goal, the true meaning of life." So when you're kind to others, especially as the study of random acts of kindness, which I'm sure you've all heard about, what it shows is there are tremendous benefits, just random acts of kindness. So the recipients of your kindness feel loved and experienced awe and increased feelings of self-worth. And the best part is they are motivated to pay forward your kindness. So your good act is exponentially paid forward, and it puts loving kindness into the world many times over. As the giver of kindness and compassion and a loving heart, you reap these benefits. Those who volunteer report fewer aches and pains than those who do not, lessening of those twinges in the hinges, as I mentioned earlier. There's a production of serotonin, a chemical that provides you with healing and calming feelings. And here's a bonus that, given we were talking about aging, kind acts and living your life for others results in 23% less cortisol, the stress hormone. And more cortisol is thought to slow down the aging process. So it can actually contribute to longevity. And both the giver and the receiver from kind acts have increased oxytocin, a hormone that lowers blood pressure, improves overall heart health, and increases self esteem and optimism. So, when we talk about resilience and being of use, there's no greater example of resilience than I can think of than the incomparable Christopher Reeve. And I'm sure you know his story. He had everything. He was beautiful, a successful film career. He had a beautiful family, and a tragic accident left him a quadriplegic whose every breath was dependent on a respirator. Yet, in this unimaginable altered state, he showed resilience. He could have been a victim, he could have given up, but he didn't. You know what he did? He thrived. He could have felt sorry for himself, but in this horrific situation, he found his purpose. He used the life he was left with in service of others. He founded a foundation to help those with spinal cord injuries. And when he spoke of his physical state, he eloquently said, "I'm not living the life I thought I would lead, but it does have meaning, purpose. There is love, there is joy, there is laughter." So I think we can all learn from Christopher Reeve. O is for optimism. And Martin Luther said, "Even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree." So outlook is everything. That's what we learned from this. And resilient people are those who identify as being optimistic, hopeful, and happy. And they reflect the triumph of hope over experience. Resilient people are happy, and happy people are resilient. We have long known that those who identify as being happy and optimistic have healthier hearts, and they report 50% less coronary disease. We have also learned that they report having more friends, and people with more friends have lower blood pressure, a better immune response, less depression, and less insomnia. So, a longitudinal study published in the Journal of Psychosocial Research found that happiness is the best predicator of resilience. I recently, about a month ago, I think it was, I wrote an article for Psychology Today about a study that indicated that people are less happy today than at any other time over 5 decades. That's right. People say they're unhappier today than at any time in the last 50 years. They found that only 14% of American adults said they're very happy, a rapid decline over past years. And the study also indicated people are less optimistic. And as we noted, optimism is necessary for resilience. So focusing on these tools of being resilient and tools of being happier is really important and never more important than this time in our history. And what's the good news is we now have a greater understanding of the physiological, neurochemical, and behavioral underpinnings of happiness and resilience. And so we can learn from that. And I could talk about this forever because I wrote an entire book about it. But let's move to the next category, which is one I'm learning personally a lot about. And I find this absolutely fascinating. And it's your thoughts. How do you manage your mind? How do you control your thoughts? And how do you focus your thoughts? So Gandhi said, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but it's very true when you think about it, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. So thinking about that and how you manage those thoughts is really critical. The author and motivational speaker Rick Riordan said, "We have only one life to live, but we can choose what kind of life it's going to be. It's a choice based on how you think about your life and what's important to you and how you process that." The ancient Greeks knew this all along. The philosopher Heraclitus said the content of your character is a choice. So, what Rick Riordan in modern times and Heraclitus in ancient times were both saying is that day by day, what you choose, what you think, what you do is who you become. They knew that you have choice. They knew that we all have choices in our life and how we think about the experiences in our life. When life throws thorns, you can choose to hunt for roses. How you think about a situation directly correlates to how you emotionally respond to it. One of the most inspirational books I've read in my entire life, and I highly recommend everyone read it once a year, is Man's Search for Meaning by the very eloquent Viktor Frankl. He was an Austrian psychiatrist and a survivor of Auschwitz. He contemplated when in Auschwitz, why did some people find meaning in the most dire of circumstances? He brought understanding to the question of why some prisoners would kill for the last slice of bread or a pair of boots and others would give theirs away. And here's a profound truth that he articulates. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. He illustrates this in his book with a story that I love, and I actually included it in the book that's already published, about a young girl who was imprisoned, and he went to see her shortly before she was about to be put to death, and she was cheerful, and he didn't understand how could she be cheerful, and he asked her why. Where did that inner joy come from at such a dark time? And she told him that through the window of her cell, she could see a tree and a bird, and witnessing this life gave her joy. She chose very consciously to focus on joy, and it brought her happiness during the darkest days of her life, and at what turned out to be the end of her life. There is a wonderful book, if anybody is interested in this topic, that I'd love to talk about with anybody who wants to talk about it. I'm still working my way through all of the practices in it, but it's called The Feeling Good Handbook by Dr. David Burns. It's literally a handbook with exercises that guide you to understand how you think, to study your own thought process, and it offers practices and exercises that help you manage your thoughts. So let's move to A, to acceptance. Ceding control over your future and events is key to resilience. And as Hal Borland said, no winter lasts forever. No spring skips its turn. Resilient people embrace and accept all that life throws in their path. They accept, as the Buddhists teach, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. They understand that all of us will experience grief, trauma, physical discomfort, even illness, and also that we will all experience everyday pain, including anxiety, stress, disappointment, and regret. The Buddhists taught that resilient people don't assign meaning to their painful experiences. And this takes some work, but it's really critical. They don't try to change things. They don't try to change others. They don't view themselves as a victim. They accept emotional disappointment and setbacks are part of life. And by that acceptance, it takes away the struggle. Scott Peck, in his book, The Road Less Traveled, said it like this: life is difficult. There is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see the truth, we transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Think about that, because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. So you stop spending your energy of your thoughts on it and you move, you flow. You flow like water. Those who are resilient consciously develop life skills to help detach from the sadness associated with misfortune. And detaching is one of life's most valuable skills. Marty Rubin said, all the things I don't want are making me very happy. And detachment for someone who has a lot of attachment issues is very hard, but it really is important. And there are processes and there are practices you can go through to better understand that. By detaching and understanding, like with happiness, that we have a choice. We have a choice to either hold on to pain or simply let it go. By detaching, we are compassionate with ourselves. And, interestingly, we don't have time to talk about this much, but in this category, there's also the topic of forgiveness, because forgiveness is a form of detaching from the pain and the hurt someone has imposed on you. And forgiveness is one of others is one of the greatest gifts you could give yourself. And also, I want to just end. I heard this quote the other day. RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, famously said, has been reported in all the papers these last weeks, that the secret to her marriage is to be a little bit deaf. So what she was teaching us is to detach a little, to view the world with a lightness of heart, and to accept the imperfections of others. So now N, navigate new paths. So here's one of my favorite quotes. It's been hanging in my house from the time I was in my early 20s, which based on my internal age was only a few years ago. But in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that was written by Camus in The Plague. So what this is really about, navigating new paths, is how do you learn to use adversity to chart a new course, to use the crisis as a life lesson and make use of it, put it to work. So those who are resilient learn from their experiences. They welcome failure and chalk it up to life lessons. They navigate hardships and gain insights that enrich lives and help them flourish. They have learned how to find gifts in adversity. I gave a talk about a month or so ago, and they asked me to include, it was a group that dealt quite a bit with cancer, and they asked me to talk about grief and loss. And we don't have time to talk about that much now here, but I did use this quote, which I think applies at this point. Julian Barnes wrote eloquently of grief, the British author, and he wrote, "Nature is so exact. It hurts exactly as much as it is worth. So in a way, one relishes the pain. If it didn't matter, it wouldn't matter." So that was his way of saying, even when you have hardship and pain, it meant you tried for something. It meant you had love in your heart. So that loss becomes a gift. And that's a way, what that says also is, what I think is that resilient people look for a light in the darkness, and they use it to chart a new path forward and to illuminate the future. And there's a very formal resiliency theory which postulates that what happens to you is not as meaningful as how you choose to view it, what you do with that experience. I recall years ago being told by an educator that the most successful people in life are not who you may think, A students, but rather they're B students because they have learned to fail and have learned how to navigate their way back to success. So T is for teamwork. And this is really important because this is about friendships. And Mark Twain said, this is, I love Mark Twain. My first book is named after a quote of Mark Twain's: good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. This is the ideal life. And the heart of that is really the good friends. Because one of the most formidable factors in a successful, resilient, happy life is a community of support. Resilient people have vibrant social connections. Through friendships, they create a positive feedback loop. And better relationships result in a richer sense of community. They have more people with friends and community have a more respect and honor for the interconnectedness of life. Mother Teresa said, there is more hunger for love and appreciation in this world than for bread. It's true, right? And then I want to share with you, and there's an exercise coming with this, is the motivational speaker, Jim Rohn. He said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So this you don't have to share in the chat box, but if you have a piece of paper with you, just jot down, or tonight, think about who are those 5 people you spend the most time with, because they are really shaping the life you have, right? So they are the people who shape who you are, who help you determine how you show up in the world. We know from studies that a person's social support is one of the most studied characteristics of resilience. In fact, the support one has prior to and during an adverse event is an indicator of how well you will recover. I remember years ago when the Catholic Church was in the newspaper when the scandals first hit, there were many reports of victims. Some of them did not survive. Some became addicted to drugs and other sources. Others managed, and some of those victims actually flourished. And I spoke about this with a friend of mine who has studied this and who works with victims of abuse. And she said one of the key factors that determined the outcome was how vast and deep was the social circle. So those who have support, even if you don't rely on that support and tell them what you're struggling with, and the by dint of having people around you who love you and whom you love, that broad circle is really and for many it's a factor in survival, because your social circle determines what conversations dominate your attention, right? They affect which attitudes and behaviors you're regularly exposed to. And eventually you start to think like they think and behave like they behave. So remember earlier I said that women are more resilient. Well, you probably already have figured out why, but they tend to have more friends than men. They also generally allow themselves to be vulnerable, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable is really powerful. And it takes risk because it's a trust factor, right? And only through vulnerability are you able to be known. Do you feel people know you and you know others? When you let others see and you see that others are not perfect. Deborah Tannen, I don't know if anyone remembers, she's a famous author, but she wrote the book You Just Don't Understand. And she studied how men speak and how women speak. And she wrote that women tend to communicate more so than men through troubles talk. They share and they commiserate, and that's part of their strength, and that's part of their resilience. Social psychologist David McClellan of Harvard wrote that the people you habitually associate with determine as much as 95% of your success and failure in life. So that's huge. So think about those 5 people. I hope everyone tonight will write down who those 5 people are. And I just want to leave you with these last thoughts as I close. When we have difficulties, sometimes when the burden is too great to bear, think about Zorba, who famously said, when faced with the destruction of his dreams, teach me to dance. There are times in life when we all need to get up and learn to dance once again. And Elizabeth Kubler Ross said, the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These these people have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. And so I guess the last quote I want to leave you with is one I mentioned earlier. It's Camus from The Plague. And it's in the midst of winter, I found there was within myself an invincible summer. And the second part of that is, that makes me happy. For it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better pushing right back. And if there's time, I have a short poem I'd love to leave you with. And it's on, I think it's beautiful. It's by a poet I just discovered last year, Jennifer, and oh my gosh, I always mispronounce her last name, but I'll get the full poem for you for those who are interested. But it's called Gathering Light for Winter, and it's about bouncing back. When you have no words for the wounds, when your body is as hollowed out and dark as a jack-o'-lantern in November, when you have lost your north, your south, your east, your west, stay still. Words for the pain are forming beneath the skin of your patience. Your body is gathering light for winter. Your compass is emerging through water. Sometimes dying is the only way to live again. It may take all your stories away. It may hunt and kill your pride. So you are left with nothing but questions and space howling into the night. What next? What now? What for? This is when grace pours her warm milk into your wounds and advises you to rest, to steal the secrets of sorrow and learn her heavy song so that you can become an instrument of resilience, turning ever forward with more than you were born with. For isn't holding hands with sorrow a bridge, dying while you are still alive, birthing your next self? So thank you. Thank you. And now, Diana, if you would like to moderate, if there are any thoughts or questions.
First, I just want to thank you. That was, as I mentioned at the outset, just such a beautiful combination of information and science and things that back up the power of thought and its association with resilience and healing. But also just I know you're a lover of poetry. Gina has a poetry salon every year at her home for years. And so I know you're just a great lover of poetry, and you're a great curator of amazing, powerful quotes. So I would like, we've got 10 or 15 minutes. I would love if you guys are interested in sharing or asking Gina any further questions. I think what the best thing to do, instead of, you can put it in the chat box, but I think the best thing to do right now is if someone would like to share, raise your hand, your blue hand, or your real hand. Diane, I noticed that. Okay, so Wendy will spotlight Diane there.
And I would just say, can I just ask too, if there's anyone who has other forms or thoughts about resilience, I would love to hear what you know. And if there's anyone who would like to be interviewed for my book, I've just started the interview process. There's going to be a series of short interviews in addition to everything else with people who have compelling stories to tell.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. And Diana, thank you for bringing us all together. Gina, I'll call you Miss Vild, Dr. Vild. My first thought when I saw your face was like, I'm looking at Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh my God.
No, she's always been not just a favorite actress, just a favorite person, because I always thought of her as just this emblem of resilience. And she survived so much, and she was such a warm, loving person. And just listening to you tonight, I just want to thank you. Everything that you've shared, and another friend who's on tonight, Carrie Byrne, knows I just got some bad news about a friend our age who is going to be dead from a brain tumor in 6 months. So tonight is very timely.
Oh my goodness.
Just, I'm getting so much tonight from your style of presenting and through poetry. And I just want to thank you, but your resemblance and you're channeling Elizabeth Taylor for me. And that's a very, very good thing. So thank you.
Oh my God, thank you. And I have to say that's such an honor to have you say something like that. And I actually met Elizabeth Taylor years ago because she was an AIDS activist. I don't know if you know that. And I met her in Florence at the AIDS conference because I used to do work through the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute with cancer and AIDS. And she was really remarkable as having a sense of purpose. So thank you. And I'm so sorry about your friend. And Diana and I were talking about this earlier. None of us know what the next hour or the next day will bring for us or for people we know. And even more, being in the moment. And we've learned this through COVID. Like, who would have thought a year ago we'd be housebound and in fear of death and illness? And it's brought us closer, I think, to life and its beauty.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diane. And I'd also just want to echo, I'm so sorry. And I'm glad you're here tonight. It's the perfect place for you to be right now.
Good to be with you all.
So Gina, you said something at the outset and we had so many people typing in. It just is echoing so much in my head is, this is not just because of the pandemic. Well, before that, as you age, it's quite obvious that it becomes a period and a time of our life of loss. But I also feel, and I would love to hear people's, stories of their own resilience that may or may not have been sparked by the pandemic. I mean, I know for me, Gina and I were talking about how, we both love nature. We both love flowers and birds and all the miracles that are in our gardens or in our backyards. And that awakening was profound. And, I think it goes back to the sheer miracle of life, right? So I'd love to hear if anybody has something that was perhaps sparked by the pandemic, that they feel a new sense of resilience and strength, despite all of the layers and layers of challenge we're feeling. Rebecca says, Gina, thank you. We all needed this night to give us strength during this challenging time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Gina, that was an amazing program. And Diane, you have done such a great job. 5 years ago, when my husband died, it was like my best friend died and I was retiring out of my business. And it was a time of reinventing my life. And I moved to Francistown by Diana, actually, who is one of my 5 friends, and developed a whole new friendship because I didn't know anybody here before this occurrence. My circle of friends was my business associates. And so upon moving here, I had to figure out, who am I going to hike with? Who am I going to kayak with? How am I going to make new friends when I lost my companion? And therein is an incredible journey of joy and friendship and giving and receiving so much that I think I have a better grounding of who I am at this point. And as I'm probably one of the older people in this crowd, resilience and change and flexibility is the key to all of our happiness. And this program just speaks to that so beautifully. And so I just want to thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah. Marcia, I'm just going to say something quickly to you and to share a little bit more about you. and it's a little bit of my own story of resilience. A couple years ago, I got a cancer diagnosis that was pretty frightening, and it was thanks to a number of human beings in my world, my beautiful friends. For the first time in my life, I felt vulnerable, and I allowed, I'm used to being the one, doing the heavy lifting or being the helper, and I had to open up and get help from others. And Marcia, my new friend, was actually my angel, in that if I had not had Marcia in my life, I would not have been able to get the cancer treatment that saved my life. And it did so because I got an exception to my insurance policy because, oh, guess what? My new dear friend happens to run a very important insurance brokerage and had some leverage. So I just want to say that to you because I want to honor you, but I also just want to share that, despite the fear and horrific time, and for those of you that have had an illness or a cancer, the reignited joy even when you're fighting, is just profound. So thank you for being here, Marcia.
You're welcome.
Alisa.
As I was listening to Gina, it made me think of a quote from Amelia Earhart that I just love. And I have to say that it has carried me through things that don't need to be talked about. But if I could just read it, it's a very brief quote. She said, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity. The fears are paper tigers. You can do anything you decide to do. You can act to change and control your life, and the procedure, the process, is its own reward." And that kept coming back to me as you were talking. It's just so powerful. The decision, the choice to be whoever we want to be.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow, Lisa, thank you for that. That was lovely. So do we have any other thoughts? Let me just look in the chat box here. We've got some really nice comments that I'll just vocalize. Jeanette said, "A metaphor for resilience that I keep in mind is one of metal that is forged by being immersed into fire, beaten, and then immersed in cold water over and over again. It makes metal very strong." Wow, that's a beautiful metaphor. And Tori shared Dharma wisdom. "You become very good at whatever you practice, so be thoughtful about what you practice. If you practice negative thoughts, you will get good at negative thoughts. Practice gratitude, you'll feel grateful more often." That's so true. Rebecca Moore says, "The apple tree quote brought tears to my eyes because the view of my apple tree from my home office, its blossoms and apples equals huge harvest, thank you, have been a key inspiration to me during the pandemic." That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think we can now transition to the second part of our evening, which will promise to be in other ways as informational and inspirational as Gina's sharing with us. Gina, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for preparing this talk for us and to sharing your bountiful wisdom and your very, very large heart. And I have to put in a little promo for your current book. And I don't know if you can do this for me, Wendy, because I'm technologically not as gifted here, but her book is called The 2 Most Important Days.
How to find your purpose and live a happier, healthier life. And it's a combination of science related to happiness, storytelling, poetry, and quotes, and exercises. There are literally exercises, things you can do to be happier, to increase your happiness quotient, which has all been a study under positive psychology. So thank you. Thank you. And I'm honored to have been included in this, Diana. I know you know how special I think you are. And we often say the serendipity of meeting through her physician and a good friend of mine was really a gift.
Yeah, it's part of life, isn't it? Well, thank you. Kristen Sansom said, thank you, Gina. Words of wisdom that become tools to use daily. That's wonderful. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I want to welcome the founding team from a company by the name of Verdania Fields. They're going to lead us in something that I think most of us have been curious about over the last year or so, since the term CBD became just so widely popular. And the experience and sharing that will come from them is called demystifying CBD. And along with that, the co-founders, Pamela Moffat and Wendy LeDuc, are going to share their reinvention story, in that they just launched this business right in the midst of the pandemic. So they're joined by their medical expert, Jana Champagne, who is very experienced from a medical standpoint. So they'll do a combination of sharing and information, giving you information about CBD and its uses and benefits. The other, which is going to be in the breakout room, and I'll have to say this too, those of you that stay in this room for the CBD presentation, this continues to be recorded, but the breakout session is not going to be recorded. It tends to be a little bit more personal sharing. So some folks prefer not to have those types of things recorded. So that will not be recorded. So Lisa Arnold, who is a gifted portrait photographer, she also has a podcast that's the same as the title of her breakout, which is How Do You Want to Be Seen? And what she'll be doing is a very interesting experience. It's sort of called a before and after selfie. So what that means is at the outset of the conversation, she'll take you through and you'll discuss not the how do you want to be seen, in terms of, tall, short, with formal clothes on or jeans. It's more about how do you want to project yourself in the world? What is you, and how do you want people to see you? So the before is before this discussion, and the after is after. And we did this once before, and it was really a profoundly interesting experience. I am just so excited to have the team from Verdania Fields here. Pamela and I met on LinkedIn. Miraculously, I found that we have 3 different connections from 3 different times in your life and in my life. And then we've even discovered more since then. So it was meant to be that we met, and I'm fascinated by your business and your passion behind what you're doing. I'm so happy that your whole team was able to be here. And Jana, your medical expert, thank you so much. I will let you take it from here, and I thank you for being here. And I don't see Wendy. Is Wendy still?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, great. I'm searching around my little boxes. Wendy LeDuc is Pamela's co-founder. So nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. It is just wonderful to be here, and I've been here every night, and I just can't get enough of it. It's fantastic what you've put together, so thank you. And thanks for having us. So I'm Pamela Moffat. Wendy LeDuc is my amazing co-founder. This business never would have happened without her, because she is the one who found our seed investor, who was actually living almost next door to her. And then also Jana Champagne, who has been working with patients in cannabis and CBD for years. And we looked forever to find someone we could trust in this business. And when we found Jana, we knew that we had come home, because she can explain CBD in a way that we never got, because we talked to so many people and one person would say one thing and no, it was so absolutely confusing. So not only is she so talented, but she formulated our products. And these products, which of course we tested before doing, blew us away. I mean, they were actually even better than we imagined they could be. So we're pretty excited about this. Our customers are very excited about it. And Wendy, why don't you start with telling your story about how we started, and then I'll talk a little bit, and then we'll turn it over to Jana, and she'll explain what you really need to look for in CBD and why the whole thing is so confusing. And then we'll have hopefully lots of time for questions.
Sure. So thank you everybody for joining us. This is very much in line with the conversations that have happened earlier. Both Pamela and I, we met a couple of years ago, but I don't think it's a coincidence because I believe everything happens for a reason. But we had both arrived at the same place. We both had very successful careers in other fields, but we were also both at a certain age where we had earned a high salary. We weren't 25 anymore, even though we may feel that way. And we both recognized simultaneously, independent of one another, that it was probably time that we reinvent ourselves. And we needed to do it post haste because we did not have a huge cushion of financial resources to fall back on. So the concept of failing at 60 plus years old, doing something new with no safety net was somewhat terrifying. At the same time, because we felt like we really didn't have an alternative to reinventing ourselves, it kind of dissipated the fear because there was an even greater fear of staying stagnant and not being able to move forward. And one of the big bugaboos that I had come to in my life was I spent my entire career, successful as it was, sitting in the back seat, letting other people drive and make decisions. And then I would be in the car crash because I wasn't the one driving the car. And I had finally gotten to the point where I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want to make the decisions. I want to be responsible and accountable for the bad directions. And so I very much became empowered to say, even if I make a mistake, it's okay because it's my mistake. I'll correct it and we can move forward. So we met, we knew right away that there was some reason that we wanted to work together. And we sat in her backyard many, many afternoons during the summer, trying to understand what kind of business we could be doing together. And at the same time, Pamela was very, very diligent about really investing in her self-care, doing things that weren't necessarily, it wasn't just about exercise and diet. She really did things on the spirituality side. She did a lot of meditation. She found alternatives in all kinds of therapy. And I really grew to admire her understanding about how the body works, how the spirit works. And we started talking about some of the challenges we were having with our own aging or health, whether it was lack of sleep, hormonal imbalance, stamina, anxiety, which I'm the queen of anxiety. And we started talking about what are the alternatives to what normally happens when you go to a physician and you start talking about these kinds of symptoms, you immediately get a prescription. So we then started looking at, okay, what are the alternatives in plant medicine? What can we be doing that's different? And through our journey, I will call it that, we became incredibly overwhelmed, disappointed, and found that this is a very complicated conversation for a lot of people. So our original intention was to do a subscription box where we would curate the best of CBD products. And our customers would get a box every month. And in that box would be the highest quality CBD products for whatever issues they were facing. And we quickly learned that there's not a lot of really good high quality products. And that became our pivot in that we needed to find a way to be creating those products of our own, that we had the confidence of the integrity and the impact of those products, which is then how we got to meet Janet. And then Pamela, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, you have to talk one more thing about, because I think this is something that everybody goes through. Talk a little bit about your fear and when we went to the first dispensary and what happened then.
So we did a field trip. We went to, first time I'd ever been to a dispensary. Her son Slater, who's a saint, took us to a dispensary, which he ditched us, by the way, once we get inside. But,
that's true.
I think he's a little embarrassed. But I was one of those adolescents in high school that probably didn't make the best decisions when it came to partaking in different things, and had some bad experiences with getting high. So I was absolutely terrified of putting anything in my body that could even remotely replicate any of those experiences that I had. So the first time we went to a dispensary, I think I spent over $200 on products, and they actually sat on my nightstand for over 2 months because I was too afraid to try them, because I was so afraid of that feeling that I had all those years ago that I didn't like. So I'm the chicken.
And I think a lot of people go through that. And I wasn't particularly a chicken, but I was a huge skeptic because I thought, I don't know. There's so much CBD. You can buy it in every bodega. It's, you know, they're screaming about this all the time. I just figured this is marketing hype. And I thought, you know, I've got much better ways of healing and whatever. So I went to the same dispensary on the same field trip, and I got some kind of cream, whatever, because I had a pain somewhere, and I'm rubbing the stuff on and nothing worked. And I did the same thing the next day, rubbed it on, nothing. So it's like, okay, that absolutely proves the point. This stuff does not work. So we went then on a series of visits to different manufacturers, and everyone told us something different. We sort of ended up more confused than the way we started. And Wendy talked a little bit about, you know, we were going to curate, and then we decided the only way to do this was to produce our own stuff. We also, my background is advertising and marketing, and as Diana had some background in that as well. So we really wanted to control the brand because there's a lot of really terrible branding in this category. So I think we came up with something that was really nice. But, you know, there was this huge fear of stepping out and, you know, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? And I think our story is one of reinvention, discovery, and really serendipity. So here we are, we've both been working for startups, you know, really interesting startups, and wow, this is going to be great. And there could be a big pot of gold. And then all of a sudden, both of our startups kind of dried up at the same time. And this is why we had a certain amount of urgency, that we didn't have a big cushion. It's like, we got to come up with something that's good. So here we are in our 60s trying something. Okay, we're in a category we know nothing about. This is all about discovery. Okay, so we have to figure that one out. And then in order to actually make this work, we have to know something about social media, which both of us have been avoiding for probably as long as social media has been around. We have no technical ability. We don't know anything about e-commerce. So, I mean, there was everything against us. So like, what, are you absolutely crazy? Luckily, we had someone who really believed in our passion, and an investor. And even though the whole country went to shit and the pandemic and the economy, he stood by us and said, yeah, you know, we pivoted, we did something a little bit differently. We came out with a box that we call our box of essentials. It's actually really your box of sanity, which is anxiety relief, deep sleep, and immunity boost. And these are the products that obviously responded to all the problems that people are having during the pandemic. I mean, it doesn't cure COVID, but, you know, anything else we can help you with. So I was in the session with Betsy Small, and she was talking about the pandemic, and it was such a great session, but because it started making me think about this whole business in a different way. And, you know, I really see this whole pandemic and the restriction as creating enormous freedom for me personally. The creation of the business, the whole ability to really, I have been in a creative business, but I am surrounded by amazing creative people, but I've been the account person, you know, so I was the person who, you know, they'd call us the suits. So maybe we'd get to do some strategy, but that was it. So my whole life, I had this fear of being creative because I wouldn't be good enough. And then finally, this is all forced on me, you know, so I'm designing, I'm writing, I'm doing the site. I'm, you know, I'm even taking the photographs with my iPhone. So this whole isolation has brought me to a completely different place in my life, which is amazing. Because I think my whole life I've been trying to find my voice. And I didn't really know what my voice was. And I think as a result of this business, of Wendy's support, and certainly Jana's there, it is just, I've sort of, you know, I never wanted to be vulnerable before. I've taken off the veil and I'm like, okay, it's just, you got to go for it. So it's been really, really interesting. And we have met just once we set the intention, serendipity just took over. And we met everybody along the line that was just incredible, you know, and they bought into the mission and they said, we want to help you because we love your mission. So it's just really amazing. I think we just need to say one more thing and then we're going to turn it over to Jana. But Wendy comes out of the world of education and publishing. Wendy, why don't you talk a little bit about really what our mission is in empowering women?
Okay. So my whole background is from the educational technology publishing world. And something I learned a long time ago is that education is the core to every human being's success. And the more information that you have, the better decisions you're able to make about your life. And one of the things that I've learned being a female, having 4 children, going through different phases in my life, is that as women, we aren't always listened to when it comes to our health and our challenges. And oftentimes we're dismissed. And so basically our vision and our mission for Verdania Fields is really to empower women through information and education to make the best possible decisions they can make for their own health and wellness for the rest of their life. And that is who we are, and that is what we strive to do every day.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So Jana, I know you're in one of these boxes somewhere.
Right here.
There you are. There's amazing Jana. Yes, so we're a California-based company. I'm a transplanted New Yorker. I am now in New York. Wendy is in California and Jana is in Oregon. So we got the whole map covered here.
Both coasts.
Yes. Yeah. So Jana has been educating a lot of practitioners for very many years and is really that, I think she's dealt with thousands of patients. But Jana, you may just want to give a short story about how you got into this and then talk a little bit about what you should look for in CBD. I mean, Jana has some very strict criteria of, in order to get the best therapeutic outcomes, you have to have a specific kind of CBD. So she'll be talking about that, and I'll just let you go.
Also, Jen, I just want to make sure you talk about the endocannabinoid system, because I know that was a big eye opener for me.
Absolutely. And I'll just kind of start. And if you guys have something I missed, just feel free to ask, and same with everybody watching. So my name is Jana Champagne and I'm a registered nurse and I'm a cannabis specialty nurse. And my pathway of coming into this work actually began when I suffered a major health collapse back in 2012. And I was very, very sick. I was working as a nurse. I was no longer able to work. I was on disability. At my worst point, I was taking over 100 pills a day just to try to function. And I started cannabis therapy, you know, of course, being in Oregon, it flows pretty freely here. It's very accessible. And I started that initially with just the objective of staying off of opioids and managing my pain. And the results were much more than expected. In addition to staying off opioids, I weaned off of most of my medications. I'm taking one still today, but it actually started rebuilding my immune system, which had gone wonky, reversed my autoimmune disease. And it just, brought me my brain back, which had really suffered from all of this. It was life altering for me. And then a few years into my own health recovery, my daughter with autism, who is now 18, this was 6 years ago, she entered a severe puberty crisis and began displaying just horrible behaviors. She was beating everybody up, and she was self-injurious, and she destroyed my house. Every wall had a hole in it, and every door was broken. And it was a pretty traumatic experience. And cannabis came into her life by necessity and actually calmed her behaviors and spared her out of home placement due to safety issues. So this is just how I explain my passion for cannabis and CBD, and what it's done for me personally is something that has just been life altering. And I've since entered the cannabis industry as a medical professional and worked with thousands of patients over the last 5 years, counseling them with medical focus to help them optimize their health outcomes using cannabis and CBD. And so this is my background and experience. And it was wonderful meeting Pamela and Wendy last year and joining with their mission to try to help women and empower them to make good health decisions. And I brought in my experience from working with patients. And I have been custom blending patient recipes with cannabis for many years through different suppliers. And I've seen the outcomes of different products on my patients, never having benefited from sales of any product. And so my views are very objective, and very much as a patient myself, patient advocacy and doing what's best for my patients has always been primary for me. And what I've learned through this experience is that, sometimes people hear CBD is good for cancer, CBD is good for autoimmune, CBD is good for autism, CBD is good for hypertension, all these different things. And of course that can breed some skepticism because people don't understand the underlying science of CBD and our endocannabinoid system. And honestly, most physicians and nurses have never heard of this 13th system in our body, which is so important. I almost call it the motherboard system, because its job is to maintain balance in our body. And the underlying cause of every disease or chronic illness is underlying imbalances. So once you understand that, it really starts to explain how CBD can be good for so many different diseases and so many different health goals. So there's the CBD piece. So CBD, or cannabidiol, is one of over 150 cannabinoids that are produced by the cannabis plant, which of course there are some portions of cannabis that are very controversial, but CBD is actually legal throughout the United States thanks to the 2018 Hemp Act. It's not intoxicating in any way, shape, or form. The legal parameters for it are 0.3% THC, which is 1/3 of 1%. So there's never any risk of intoxication or impairing function when somebody is taking CBD, which is important to most patients that are really medically focused. And then the criteria that we talked about, that I began teaching my patients out of frustration, because sometimes my patients would call me and they had already spent way too much money on product that often was not ideal for their goals, but other times couldn't be verified as safe because it lacked lab testing. So there were times I had to tell patients, I'm really sorry, but I cannot condone the use of that product. So my nurses and I came up with what we call the FLOW criteria to help teach our patients what to look for when they were seeking medical quality cannabis products. And FLOW stands for F is for flower derived, which is very important, especially with CBD, because a lot of producers are using subpar raw material to make their CBD tinctures and quote unquote medicine, like industrial hemp, which is not as potent. You don't get the same beautiful spectrum of therapeutic compounds as you get when it's flower derived. So that piece is very important, especially with CBD. The L being for lab testing, which I mentioned already a little bit. If a product is not lab tested, you can't verify that it's safe. You can't verify what's in that bottle. And it's a big unknown. And there was a study done recently where there were bottles of CBD purchased and tested, and something like 70% of them did not have the label match the contents inside the bottle. And the only way to make sure and verify that the label is correct is through that lab testing. So that's an important parameter. And also verifies, that there aren't any toxins left over from the growing or the processing that could be left in that tincture form.
And you may
Oh,
want to add too that it's not a requirement to test CBD in the same way it is for cannabis, but we require it certainly for all our products.
correct. Great point. And not everybody does test their products. So, Verdania Fields goes above and beyond to make sure their product is safe, their product is as labeled, which is very, very important for patients, and knowing how much they're taking and being able to calculate what their dose is once they figure out what works for them so they can duplicate it. The O, of course, in the flow criteria is for organic. We want it organically grown. We want to minimize any risk of toxic insult to patients who are already sick, and toxins can make them worse. And then the W is probably the most important. It stands for a whole plant spectrum. And this means that the cannabis flower and the hemp flower has been concentrated as nature intended, which entails more than 500 therapeutic compounds. And research supports that when all 500 of those are in the final product, you're going to get the most balancing effect from it, which of course is the most therapeutic and the deep work that we really want to help improve people's health. It's not just superficial symptom management like most pharmaceuticals. So that really sets it apart. And so as far as dosage, a lot of people are confused about that as well. They don't know how much to take. Well, the most important thing, number one, make sure you're buying a good quality product. Number two, make sure that if you're taking pharmaceuticals, this is important too. You want to make sure those are checked by a medical professional because there can be some interactions. And part of that consultation with a medical professional should entail going over how to start with your dosing, which is always very low dose, usually 1/4 ml to start, a couple times a day. You want to really be paying attention to your body's reaction and follow that. And you can increase indefinitely until you reach your goal. You don't want to be taking more than you need, because there's no danger of overdose specifically. You can take as much as you need, but you don't want to be taking more than you need because that can be kind of wasteful. So it's really just about experimenting and finding your perfect dose. The great thing about CBD, you don't have to worry about overdose, no toxic level in humans, period. And you can take what you need. Most people find kind of a baseline that they're taking twice a day and they have pretty good symptom management. But if you have a harder day for whatever reason, people with pain, if a weather system comes through, their pain will increase. You can always take extra and you don't have to worry about taking too much and it causing problems, which is really uncommon if you try to translate that to the pharmaceutical and other medicine world. So those are the big take homes.
It's interesting because the number one question that we get is, how much do I take?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say it's right there on the bottle, which is a full dose is a dropper. And the droppers have all been calibrated so that a full dropper is 1 milliliter and you can see what a 1/4 is. So there the little markings on it. So it makes it really easy. So Jana always recommends that, particularly for people who are nervous about taking CBD, like Wendy,
Mm-hmm.
that you start with, I guess, a microdose of 1/4 milliliter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 1/4 dropper. And generally nothing is going to happen. But what it will help you get over is that some weird thing is not going to happen to your body. I mean, that was one of the things that I really was nervous about. It's like Slater gave me some cannabis something or other to sleep once. Oh my God. It was like pulling a lead blanket over. I felt like I was losing consciousness, So we have something called deep sleep, which is exactly what it sounds like. It extends the sleep and it's really very deep. But you don't feel like, oh my God, I gotta go to sleep. It's just so gentle. And the thing that we hear from a lot of people is this feels really pure. And that's really thanks to Jana's criteria. So dosage is a big thing that can be scary, but once you start, you're just gonna fall in love with it.
One thing I want to add, because I think it's important, is that we do have a free nurse line. If you go to our website, you can schedule a 15-minute consultation with a nurse and ask your questions and get answers so that you feel comfortable. And I think that that's also an important part of the education. We want you to be comfortable. And I will also say that being the little chicken little that I was, I'm way over that at this point in my life. I stopped sleeping when I had my first baby, which was 35 years ago. So for me to be able to sleep the way that I do, and some of the other issues I have with anxiety, this has been a life-changing event for me. I used to have a prescription for Xanax because I used to get periodic panic attacks that were just like I'd end up in the emergency room. And I don't have those anymore. If I start to, and I know what they feel like when they creep up. And once I start to feel that, I just take my CBD and within seconds, they're gone. And I don't have to worry about being addicted to a pharmaceutical, which has proven to be very problematic for a lot of women across this country and is literally ruining their lives. So we're very proud of the work that we've done, and working with Jana has been a gift. And I think another benefit that I just want to add in terms of the total context of us being together this evening, there is a tremendous amount of strength and power in women working together. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're so blessed with is that we've been brought together and we are a team. We're female, we have a male investor, God bless him. But I just really feel like it has made the journey so much richer because we've been brought together to do this work as a whole and help as many women as we possibly can. And we are very, very grateful. So.
We are indeed. Timing wise, should we open for questions or do we?
That would be great. I want to focus on sleep. I have this new rule that I'm concentrating on one thing a month, you know, besides my business and my life. I'm going to think about one thing a month that I'm going to get really smart at and good at and practice diligently. And sleep is the number one thing for me. Can you share a little bit about how CBD affects and helps you gain more deep sleep?
Of course. And to be clear, it's, you know, in our formulation, it does contain CBD, the one for sleep, but it also contains a second cannabinoid called CBN. And that's really where the sedation comes in. CBD on its own can sometimes be more stimulating for people. And so we've taken the CBD and we have added CBN, which makes it sedative. We've added other terpenes, and terpenes, you can think of them as the essential oil of the cannabis plant. They actually help to drive whether that specific strain of cannabis is more stimulating or more sedative in its effect. And so we've chosen terpenes to add that are also very sedative. And what we hear reported back is not only easier time falling asleep, but deeper sleep seems to be what's reported most often, and feeling more refreshed and awake and alert upon waking. You know, it kind of reduces, sometimes when people take things for sleep, they wake up really groggy and have kind of a hangover. Yeah. So we hear that seems to be really lessened when you're using the CBD plus CBN.
I can't wait to try it.
Yes, you'll have to let us know how you feel.
I will. Marsha, I do have a question.
Yeah,
I sure do. This sounds fabulous. All right, so I'm wondering about joint pain. I'm 77 years old. Okay, I hike with people that are 62, 63, most of my friends. So we hike mountains and we kayak all over everywhere. And I am just love my friends, but my body, sometimes I have to take, you know, a couple of Advil and that's not good for you on an ongoing basis. So this sounds fabulous. So how would this affect me from an athletic point of view and an energy point of view? Keeping so that I can continue to hike with younger people, and I am in really good condition. So, you know, it isn't a problem right now, but you know, the clock's ticking and I still want to be with my friends for another 10 years.
Oh, yeah. You'll be passing them with this, but I'll let Jana give you scientific reasons.
How do I buy it?
Yes. So I would suggest trying our daytime pain formula, since you're looking for a pain formula that's more energetic and is going to get you moving and help you exercise and make the most of that exercise.
Yep.
Research supports CBD for pain management and for decreasing inflammation. It also supports CBD as a performance enhancer for athletes. So you might actually find that you're starting to run circles around your younger friends. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't tell them the secret.
So I got to ask one thing. Could I take that during the day to do what if I'm going out on one of these adventures? And then at nighttime, take your sleep formula, and it wouldn't be addictive. I don't take any drugs whatsoever, ever. I don't drink very much. I never smoked. I just don't take any drugs.
That's
So I'm wondering how this will, affect me in the long run.
And the answer to that is the only way to know is to try it yourself. There's a lot of individual variation in response, which is part of why we don't have standardized dosing for CBD. We guide people through starting slowly, increasing slowly, finding what works for you specifically. It really is an individual experimentation process. What you can expect is that you may see a reduction in pain, you may see better energy, and there is no issue with taking the pain formula in the morning and the sleep formula at night. As we
tell her about the pain we have a nighttime pain formula as well, though.
We do, yes, and that one is great for pain that we call it painsomnia. If people are up at night and not able to sleep due to pain, our PM pain formula is really good for that.
You take that in addition to your sleep formula, or you take that instead of?
You can actually take it in place of the sleep formula.
Yeah,
it has
one.
Things that will help you sleep. And what we hear about that is for people who have been golfing or had some pain or whatever, we had a couple of skeptics, and one man took this, and a couple of people, they take the nighttime pain. And one woman actually said, this is the first time in years that I have woken up without any pain in the morning and slept all the way through the night. Yep. The other thing, I want to just get back to sleep for a second, Diana, because I think sleep is our bestseller and more people have sleep issues than anything. But as long as, Marcia, we've answered your question, or do you have another one?
How do I buy it?
Yeah, good. Well, I just put it out there, verdaniafields.com. So it's out in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And I'll help you too, Marsh, if you don't capture that.
Yeah. Okay. So for sleep, so Slater, who had Lyme disease, so he had a lot of trouble with sleeping, and he's one of these Fitbit people who does exactly what you do. It's like, how much did I get? So both his REM and his deep sleep went up significantly, and he is a huge skeptic about all this stuff. I don't know where he gets that, but so he was blown away, and nothing blows him away. So you should see, even on your Fitbit, that will tell you that it's working.
Well, and one other thing I just want to throw out to the crowd, because it's another product that we just launched, and I have a lot of friends in my circle, and myself included. We also just launched a product for focus, because one of the things that's happened, at least in my brain, at this point in my life, is maybe I don't have the concentration that I used to. And that's something else that we've been able to bring to the table that's been incredibly helpful for a lot of people.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, the first time we were sampling this and Wendy took some of it, and she's like, yeah, I feel like I can make 5 dinners, clean the entire house, wash the car. It is actually, you really get very good focus and concentration.
That's
and
wonderful.
Energy.
Yep. Yep.
I found it, although we didn't have tons of time with you guys, I found it incredibly informative. And as your title says, demystifying, because I'm all those things: afraid, concerned, don't want to jump on some bandwagon that's not really healthy for me. We'll be very careful. So thank you for demystifying a lot and to sharing your stories of reinvention also. So
thank you.
I want to open it up to all of the group that's come back together.
Lisa's session was wonderful. It was about a new way of seeing. And also she taught us how to take selfies. So that's practical and esoteric.
Thank you.
So, I thought it was really interesting, Lisa's question about how do I want to be seen? is actually, what do I want people to know about me?
Mm.
And I never, ever, ever thought about that in terms of in a picture. You know, to have that in mind as somebody's taking a picture of me, or as I'm taking a picture of myself, or even as I'm on Zoom, which so many of us are constantly now. What do I want people to know about me? Not necessarily at all when I'm talking, but just with my presence and how I'm looking. That's fascinating.
That's wonderful. Is there anything that you can share further, not to be overly personal, but is there anything that you could share to illustrate that for us?
Well, she asked, you know, what do I want people to know about me, and then I thought I want people to look at my photo or my image or whatever and think that I'm kind, that I'm accepting, that I'm. I think those are the two words that I used.
It's beautiful. That's wonderful.
And it might seem like that doesn't really matter. So that means you smile. But as soon as she said kind, when you think of a portrait, you're creating your portrait, you're having a conversation. If you're having a conversation with someone and you look like this, I can't see myself, which is just fine. And you sit back, what does that body language say? What conversation are you having versus this? Just that simple, the motion of having a conversation. If you want to be seen as kind and open, you don't do this. You don't do that. Yeah. So that was a beautiful example that she wanted to be seen as kind.
That's so true, because all of us, the other thing that I think probably, maybe it didn't, but that came up the first time we did this experience together, Lisa, was that people talked about the fact that, you know, at a certain point you stop saying, I gotta look young, I gotta look as young as possible. You know, I always remember, because I'm an older mother, my daughter's, I had her when I was 41. I kept explaining to her, I said, she asked about why I had all these wrinkles on my face, because all of her friends' moms didn't. And I said, every single one of these is a result of smiling and laughing and happiness. And it, you know, as I said it, I was like, I'm trying to help my child, but I finally embraced it and believed it, you know, so.
Yeah. I see Ellen here, and I've had the privilege of photographing Ellen. She's the quintessential study of somebody who has thought about who she is and how she wants to be seen in the world. And the difference, both sessions were wonderful, but the difference between the first and the most recent, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. Just the beautiful confidence that came out was just lovely.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, Ellen.
Thank you all for your attention too. I appreciate it.
So how about those of us that were in the CBD? I mean, so what was there, are there still burning questions? Are there questions now that are feeling resolved for you, and your intrigue is changed from trepidation or concern to interest? Or I'd just love to hear if you had any thoughts too.
Definitely interested. This definitely cleared up some questions that I had. I want to make sure that I just want to say that you three ladies are just such an amazing, you all look different, but you seem like you're on the same path with this. And I think that's really amazing, especially considering the fact that, you know, these are difficult times, and starting this up, that's really something to be proud of, I think. So congratulations, and I wish you good luck. And I'm definitely going to try some.
Thank you. Yes. Well, remember, there's the nurse line. If you have more questions, or reach out to any one of us, we'd be happy to answer them.
It's wonderful.
So I've been thinking about CBD for a while, and you know, aches and pains, etc. And then I saw that Martha Stewart, of all people, has a line.
Yep.
And, but she's baking it or whatever. I mean, she's doing her thing with it, like the gummies and all that. And, but, I was considering buying some. And then I thought, I don't know anything about dosing or any of that. So I love how you guys have approached it, with the dropper, and that you can experiment, and that, you've gotten the purest products, et cetera. So I'm very excited for sleep, et cetera. I also really admire your story, your business story. I'm a longtime business person. And I'm just curious, I don't know if I missed this, but why did you pick CBD specifically as your venture?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't know that we have the perfect answer, but a lot of things sort of crystallize at the same time. And I've always been into non-traditional medicine and healing. And so was very attracted to plant-based healing. I mean, because in reality, all the answers always come from the earth in very many ways. And I think Wendy, given her background, was also very interested in that. And we just started this journey knowing nothing and thinking, maybe we'll find something out, maybe we won't. And it was a tough slog, whatever it was, to actually find the answers. And there were points where we thought, are we just really barking up the wrong tree? And I mean, we had these gummies once from this wonderful company, and we thought, oh, this is going to be great. And they tasted wonderful. And then we went out to lunch with the owner, and Wendy and I both turned to one another like 10 minutes later, and we both had splitting headaches, So there's a lot of stuff out there that looks wonderful, but it's not so great. And, we were on the phone with Jana the other day, and we were talking about a particular competitor who's saying a lot of the same things that we're saying. And Janice said, oh no, because of the way it's extracted, instead of having 500 compounds, they have like a dozen. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to get the same sort of therapeutic value. So mm-hmm. There's, we could only sort of touch the surface tonight about all the things that you have to look for, but there's lots of information on our site. There's the nurse line. I mean, part of the mission of educating women is to be really transparent. And we find that because of all this marketing speak, and there's a lot of jargon, and what is this kind of extraction and all this kind of stuff, that you can't really figure out what you're looking for, even when you're on somebody's site.
Well, one other thing I want to add, which is aside from the CBD itself, there was also the business aspect of making the decision, which is looking at markets where there were huge opportunities for growth, especially in a short period of time, because we're not 30 years old. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the combination of the subscription box and the revenue that has been associated with that market over the last 5 years, and then you look at the explosion of CBD, it was very, very clear that there was a huge opportunity in this segment and lots of room for people to come in. And that was another reason why it made sense for us to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Really great. Thank you.
I'm so intrigued, especially when I heard that you started this during this whole craziness, that I can't wait to hear your story.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You just keep taking the anxiety stuff, you're all good.
And I heard it can help you sleep. I thought, how can I miss this?
I know. Yeah. Amen.
For sure.
Oh my gosh. Well, what an amazing evening we've all shared. And thanks to Gina and Pamela and Wendy and Jana and all of you. I enjoyed every minute. When I set out to create this series, I was like, oh, what was I thinking? 4 nights in a row, 2 hours. Am I insane? And tonight has flown. I don't know. I'm hoping it's the same for you, but it's just completely flown by. And I'm really, really pleased that you were all here. And I want to just transition really quickly to talk about tomorrow night. It's our final night. And it's, again, something a little bit different, but I'm very excited. the main conversation tomorrow and presentation is called Intergenerational Alchemy and Mutual Mentorship. So it's all about forging bridges and better communication and understanding and bonding and relationships, not only in the workplace and in our communities, but also importantly, for those of us with adult children. So the gentleman that's running the conversation and panel is a guy by the name of Ted Powell, and he is a really gifted speaker and facilitator. So you'll enjoy his style and what he's put together. And he's invited his son, who's in his 20s, and they're going to sort of tell their story of, you know, the headbutting as wise daddy tries to tell young son what to do and how they had to shift that. And then there's a mother-daughter team that founded an amazing grocery and fine foods company up in Vermont. So the mother-daughter team will talk about how they work together as mother and daughter, and the rest of the force with them. Then we'll have 2 breakout sessions again, one by a woman by the name of Kip Hollister, who runs a really established staffing organization in Boston, and now has launched the Hollister Institute. And she is all about igniting your highest potential. And she'll use some meditation practice as a sort of a doorway into that. And then the second is a guy by the name of Sam Taylor, who is going to take us through a series of, teach us different types of breath work. I'm not sure how many of you have explored breath work. You know, like you, Pamela, I've been on this quest to understand all the different modalities available to me to, you know, affect my immune system and positively affect my mental and physical health. And breath work has been something I'm fascinated in. So I'm so excited he'll be here to share. He has a website that is probably on the web, on my web page for this event. And his whole goal is just to get these things out in the world for people to experience. So it's just, you can go and learn for all of the different methods. So unless anybody has anything they need to add, I close by thanking you all. And as we've done the last few nights, take your mute button.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
wave and say goodbye to
Thank you.
Thank you.
bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.